just wondering, how about you introduce the guys?
All right. Well, the first guy is Jeff Velasquez. He's in Corpus Christi practicing T4T down there, and he just recently got out of the Army and transitioned into city or civilian ministry. Jonathan Ammon is in Detroit, Michigan, or Hamtramck to be exact, and he is working with all kinds of ethne, practicing T4T for over a little over 2 years. And then Sean Sullivan is the missions pastor at Crossbridge Community Church here in San Antonio. And they've been working with T4T for just a little while, but they've seen some really exciting things in the past even weeks. So that's kind of our team, and I'm from San Antonio as well.
So Chuck, how did you meet this bunch of guys? Connect with them might be better. Meet them online.
Yeah. Well, the Lord Jesus brings all those co-laborers together. I met Jeff while I was still working with the Army ministry. Jonathan and I believe that we kind of connected online through some mutual friends. And then Sean came to one of our T4T training summits here in the city. In fact, I believe he came to the very first one, and so Sean has been journeying with us since our first event training a while back. So that's how I met all these guys.
Okay. And now, who have you known for longest?
Probably Jeff. Jeff Velasquez, yeah.
Well, why don't we, Jeff? Why do you hang out with Chuck? What sort of stuff have you been doing with him?
Well, we were busy planting small groups across the military installation in the surrounding cities, and we recognized that there had to be a better way at training people so that we could see a more effective expansion for Jesus. And I had been kind of tracking that Chuck was experimenting with some newer, more effective ways of ministry, and so I was kind of following him through that experimentation process. And once he kind of landed on T4T, I was instantly very interested to hear how that worked, because there was just so much ministry opportunity and so many hungry people, and we're just looking for a better tool to be more effective as we were out there making disciples of Jesus. So that's kind of how I started looking to Chuck, because I was really fascinated. And furthermore, I read your book, several of your books, Steve.
Okay.
And I realized that there's like a whole bunch more stuff that could happen than what we were seeing. And so I had a insatiable thirst to start taking steps in that direction. So.
All right. And what's happened since then? Since you started going in this sort of not totally new direction, but you've altered how you're trying to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, just having a more deliberate training methodology, and realizing we needed to kind of script the training at the beginning for young practitioners, because we were already able to help guys launch groups, but I think that the T4T process helped us have something that was more reproducing generationally. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. Okay. So being clearer and also a bit more sort of, was it more streamlined or just more reproducible?
Yeah, we had some methods that were reproducible. It just took a really long time, and it seemed that the T4T methods were more effective and a lot easier to reproduce.
Okay. So what's been, can you think of an example of how, I mean, your training is different, but what's different out there in the world of people's lives who have been touched by the gospel in some way? You think of an example of what that's looked like?
Yeah, the method I've used, and I'm still trying to figure out what's most effective, because this is still an experimental phase for me, is we were running training church, and we'd have about 18 to 20 people in this training church, and we'd meet Sunday mornings, and we'd train on how to, people how to follow Jesus and how to go out and reach other guys. So we would see in certain neighborhoods sometimes stuff would start taking off. Someone would start a house church in their neighborhood, and pretty soon almost all the families in the neighborhood would become involved in that. And it got too big, so they'd have to launch an additional generational group from that one. And stuff just started taking off. Now, I don't think we quite knew what we were doing. We didn't really know how to capitalize on that yet. We realized that we were dealing with Jesus has some pretty explosive stuff out there that we could kind of tap into. So we haven't seen a huge amount of baptisms yet, but we're still trying to figure out how to take advantage of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. We might check in with Jonathan. And Jonathan, can you tell us what have you been up to? What's been the sort of outcome of just connecting with Chuck, doing some learning, doing some coaching with him? What's been happening?
Yeah, well, I was trying to do T4T for about a year, and I didn't have a whole lot of help. I was watching Jeff Sundell's trainings on YouTube over and over and over again, reading a lot of books and all that stuff, and I had got the bug that a movement of people coming to Christ is, in my mind and heart, is the thing that Jesus most wants in this world, and so. But I was failing miserably. I was working with a lot of addicts. Actually, everybody I was working with at that point was either an addict or from a different religious background, whether Muslim or Hindu. And so I was failing big time. I was like, Lord, I need some help. And so I really believe that in answering that prayer, God hooked me up with Chuck online. And I was so impressed by how much he cared about me, how much he cared about my ministry, loved me, praying for me. He was praying for me every day, and for people that I was working with that he had never met. He was praying for them every day, and I was just blown away by his commitment. And that's been really transformational in my life as example as a pace setter. And I could talk a lot more about that. But in the last year, we've seen some generational growth. I think we're over 20 groups now. And we've seen some Muslims come to Christ through a lot of miraculous things. We've seen a lot of people being healed. We've seen a lot of people having dreams, and so on. And so we're still pressing forward to see some really deep generations. And I believe that the Lord is working, and things are starting to get messy, which is a good sign that some growth is happening. Yeah, but God's used Chuck tremendously, and really helped me understand there are a lot of things that you need constant feedback. You need a community of practice, a community of learning, and you need just someone who cares that you can ask a lot of questions to, and Chuck has always been there for that.
So the sort of training videos, the books, they help to a certain level, but if you're really engaged in this stuff and giving your life to it, you're saying it really helps to have a human face, not just a video, or for both encouragement and fine-tuning. Is that been your experience?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, I was listening to your podcast, reading lots of books, watching level 1 trainings over and over, but I think everybody needs to actually go through level 1 training, go through the commands of Christ themselves, go through short-term discipleship themselves, master it, and actually be doing what they expect other disciples to do, and be doing it at a higher level to set the pace for those that are going to come to faith and are going to need that example. So I tell everybody, it doesn't matter how much you know, you need to go through level 1 training with real people.
Yeah. Okay. And so you must be in quite a diverse community then. From the sort of people that you've described, it's quite. Is that what your neighborhood is like? It's sort of got all sorts of people in it.
Yeah, I'm in a 2 square mile area of Detroit called Hamtramck that is really where God has placed me. And it's in that 2 square miles, there's about 23,000 people. It's majority Muslim. So there's 14 mosques in those 2 square miles. Most of the people are from Bangladesh or Yemen, the Middle Eastern, but there's 27 different languages spoken in the high school here. So it's an extremely diverse community. Cross-cultural ministry is where I live every day, and doing learning how to share the gospel across language barriers and so on. So it's a lot of fun, and we get to see God intervene in a lot of supernatural stuff, because if He didn't, we would be helpless.
Okay, well, we'll have a little bit in common, because we've just moved into an area of London that is predominantly Bangladeshi Muslim, and so we might come back to that, see what you've been learning. But we should move on to Sean, and Sean, you're new to this stuff. How did you get started?
Well, I'd read the book T4T and was just fascinated by it because, being a missionary, I just, couldn't. It was staggering to see the types of results that Ying and others were having. And here in San Antonio, there was just a radical group, joking, Chuck, a radical group talking about they were going to start this training, and it was kind of along the same line, so I couldn't wait to go. And just met Chuck for the first time, and just immediately his life just rings with authenticity. He just lives exactly the talk, and was just totally attracted to that. Took the training and just thought it was like fantastic, and started using it, in my spheres of influence in our church. And also we had a ministry on the west side in an inner city area, was using it there, and just realized right away I felt like I was a little bit out of my my range of really understanding, like what you were talking about before, just seeing it really work. I could hear about it on paper, but what it really looked like. And so that just really attracted me to spend time with Chuck and reach out to him. He's got great teaching skills too, and is a great modeler of things that he's doing. And we've learned a lot from that. Got my senior pastor to go. I kind of begged him, please just go, just once, just humor me, because this will really like rock you. And he went, and Chuck can tell you, it just rocked his life. He was just immediately just gripped by the obedience-based model, God's love language, obedience, and just immediately realized this is what we needed. And so we just started on the journey, got others on our staff to go, and then networked with Chuck to host Ying Kai down here for like a ad hoc kind of informal roundtable, and got our leaders from our church to come out, and it just started to generate enthusiasm, because those four red letter areas of T4T are just the key ingredients that are starting to change what we do, because it makes everything so simple, so clear, so intentional, so focused, and yet it's really flexible. And so that's great for us, because we have about 35 groups, but they all have a different personality and a little bit of a different style, and so this gives them a process to tap into that is starting to create a leadership development, and also just discipleship kind of culture that we were a little bit missing, that we were trying to make happen, but we couldn't figure out what were the ingredients that we were missing. And I think just our involvement with Chuck and just the network has really helped us see with great clarity what we needed to put in.
Okay, so you've well, I guess in this first phase, you've got excited. You've helped get others on board, and that's come through discussions, but also they've been willing to come and do the training. And now you're beginning to implement it with your existing small groups in the church.
Well, actually, even bigger than that, Steve. We decided that we were going to go forward and make it the entire church. So from children's ministry to youth, we brought everything integrated into the same process, basically the same paradigm, but just age appropriate, and are trying to experiment with that at every single level. So there's just this continuity and culture of this obedience based and vision casting and practice, and it's just all there at every level, which is challenging, but yet we're excited to see what God might do with it.
Okay. And your role in all of this is you're the missions pastor at the church.
Right. And my role is global, so it's both local missions as well as overseas. So I helped facilitate and cast vision for people getting out of suburbia into cross-cultural experience that hopefully can leverage, you know, what is stirred up by God in those places to come back and be that same type of person right here in our context. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking now that we've talked to, you know, three of you, just reflecting on you're all in different ministry contexts. I mean, Jeff, a lot of your groups are in the military, and Jonathan, sounds like your groups are more in a very diverse, multicultural neighborhood. And Sean, your starting point is a church plant of, you know, over 1,000 people now, and yet each of you are, you know, hanging out with Chuck and learning some of the same things, but applying them in very different worlds. Chuck, why don't you make a comment on that, and then I'll get the guys to chip in.
Sure.
What's it like trying to coach guys across 3 totally different worlds?
Yeah, my first comment is I've heard my name way too much. I think that Jesus is doing some radical things not only in our city but around the country and around the world. And when you find fellow co-laborers with a passion for Jesus and his work, it's easy to lock arms together. And you know, there are some folks that feel like you can't do this, you can't be this diverse. But I think with Jesus, there is a high potential for completely diverse contexts and cultures and methods to come together with a common vision to reach the world for Christ. And so to me, that's what these guys represent. They represent a burning passion, your white-hot faith that you talk about, to reach their neighborhoods, reach their city, their state, their country, the nations for Jesus. And so to me, that's the easy part, when you find fellow co-laborers that are that passionate. I call them fourth soil men and women who produce 30, 60, 100-fold. Yeah. So those are the kind of people that Jesus connects together for the sake of his mission. Leading them is a misnomer. I don't lead anybody. I just throw gas on their fire. That's my spiritual gift. Find the fire, throw gas on it. And so that's pretty simple. So,
yeah. So, like any good coach, you're looking for people who have really put their hand up for this, are really committed to it, and a lot of your job is done for you in that internal motivation. Yes. But I think I'm also hearing from the guys that God also works through you to encourage them in that journey. I guess link them to each other. And there's something in terms of being a practitioner, having a human face on the support, the accountability, that really adds to the learning experience. You know, unfortunately, good books aren't enough.
They certainly are a catalyst, though.
Yeah, they help get people started. But yeah. Okay. Well, I've got another question for the guys, which is really, what are you learning? And perhaps we'll just sort of go back to Jeff and start with him. But Jeff, what are the things since you've been on this journey, you know, that have really struck you? Either old things that have just really become a part of you, or fresh things that are new. But what are some of the key lessons along the way for you?
I think that one of the key critical differences that we had to shift our emphasis towards was teaching people to obey Jesus instead of teaching people to know about Jesus, know lots of facts about Jesus. So one of the things that training with the online group has helped us to do is to really grasp that and see how practically that works out when we train young men and women to follow Jesus, go make disciples. So what that looks like practically is, in the past, we kind of just teach somebody something, fire and forget, and hope that they would survive out there. And then we just keep teaching through something just to get through it. And now, as we realize that Jesus' command is to teach people to obey, I learned this from the old Chuck guy over there, but is just revisiting things repeatedly until people master real simple skills. Like when we train young men to go to war, really all the things they need to do is be able to shoot, to move as a member of a team, and to communicate. And when it comes to following Jesus and making disciples, there's some really simple things that we just have to get good at. And being able to have a disciplined, deliberate process, that's been one of the biggest things that's helped me.
Okay. How about for you, Jonathan? What's been a key lesson for you since you've been on this journey?
Well, I agree with Jeff, and the 3/3 process, I think, is really foundational to T4T, obviously, but I think to movements in general. The question kind of became, how do we do obedience-based discipleship? Because obedience-based discipleship is a universal church planting movement principle, but how do we do it? And I realized I don't know what obedience-based discipleship looks like without some form of the 3/3 process. And so I've attracted a lot of really creative people, people who want to tweak it and do different kinds of things, and they're like, I could improve this and so on. But what I'm learning is you need to have a skill with the 3/3 process, because without some form of it, I don't know how you're going to do obedience-based discipleship. There probably is a way, but I haven't figured it out yet. And so until then, I think that learning the 3/3 process, having a time of looking back, reviewing, having loving accountability, new teaching that's inductive, Bible study, participatory, and then having time where you practice and you learn and develop skills to apply it is something that's really revolutionary, that people it's not intuitive. People need to learn this as a skill. People need to be intentional, and a lot of people, if they don't have, like I said, that level 1 training, that interaction with somebody, they'll do a really sloppy job of obedience-based discipleship. The other thing I think has been key and transformational in my life is the way Chuck has led. He has been a pace setter, so Chuck's out sharing the gospel every day. He's a muddy boots general. I need to do that to lead my guys, and I learned that if I share every day, then usually my guys share at least once a week, and often more, because they see my example right there. I'm going to pray for my guys every single day and be on my knees with their names on my lips, talking to God about them. And if I do that, then they're going to learn that that's what they need to do for their guys. And that's been huge in my life. Chuck's also really served me by creating documents and spreadsheets and all these fancy things to help me in my context, and really added his skills to my ministry. So I think learning a lot about leadership, and leadership is kind of pioneering. He's going out in front and giving us the example and so on. So.
Okay, good. Well, Sean, you've been on the journey the sort of shortest period of time, but anyone listening is going to want to hear what you have to say, because they may just be a step behind you. They may be thinking, well, I want to get started with this stuff. So what have you learned about making a good start?
Well, for sure, I agree with everything Jeff and Jonathan said. I think the obedience base, we just keep hearing that over and over again. And for us, I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that there's just a gap. There's a gap for people. I don't know if it's the way we've been taught or our culture, or how it's, you know, it'd be interesting to hear from you guys. Jeff and Jonathan were working in kind of multi-ethnic, you know, areas, but you know, we're kind of all in suburbia up here. But it's really, there's just a gap between, you know, even doing the inductive study, people just immediately go to the gloss, to the general, like I'm going to be a better husband, and to really take them to that next level of really hearing from the Spirit. You know, what is it that God's really asking you to put into your life? What can you actionize? Make up that word. What can you actually, you know, with the power of the Spirit and the grace of God and humility, what can you actually actionize? As point, you know, just universally, as we've been debriefing week after week about trying to walk this out, that is where the sticking point is, helping our life group leaders really know how to coach people beyond the general. And that's really, I think, the PowerPoint is when you can get people there, and then you come back and they've been praying for themselves to actually live that out, and then they see God do something during the week where they get to live it out. It just creates this enthusiasm when they come back and get to share kind of that supernatural thing that they saw, you know, God do, that they felt, you know, deeply He was convicting them about. But then when they've actually walked it out for the week, it just really fuels their fire. And I think that's also what we're learning too in the inductive study. We're learning that though the questions are so simple, it really takes a lot of discipline to help people stay on the questions. Like, you know, what are you learning about God? Like last night, I was doing the Lord's Prayer, like, you know, worship and prayer with a guy, and as soon as I asked, what do you learn about God, he immediately went to the big general. Well, you know, we need to pray to Him. I mean, but he wasn't catching what God was saying in the passage. And as I started asking more questions, trying to help him unpack that, all of a sudden he started to see all these amazing qualities and character of the Father, and he was like blown away. And I think that that's part of the coaching process that becomes very intentional, very, very kind of difficult, because, you know, not everyone thinks like that, but they've got to figure out how to flex in these relationships to learn how to take people deeper and not let it just be a general Bible study. I mean, although that would be good, it seems like as you go deeper, you start to see more of what can really be actionized when you get into the nature of God, the nature of man, and then where's God really, you know, intersecting that with your life, with thinking different, doing different, being different. Those are the three I use to have people try to think about it differently. So I really think obedience-based is really the key, as long as that, combining that with the planning, really challenging them with their name list or with sharing it, you know, somewhere, somehow in their circle, is what's really going to make the difference for us. Again, we just have little seedlings and little, you know, blossoms of things starting to happen, but I just think it's the beginning. I really think it's going to really change our entire church.
So that obedience-based, I've sort of picked up a couple of themes across all of it. It's that obedience side. But often in churches we use, you know, obedience and discipleship to beat people over the head, make them feel guilty. And it feels like the parent that's asking a little child to jump over a high jump that's too high. What I like about what you've shared is we're saying obedience is the love language, our love response to God. But now it's our role through simple processes to teach obedience, to go on a journey with people, to help them discover what that means. So instead of making it an impossible, guilt-driven thing, it becomes something very practical. Yeah, so it's, and I can see, Jeff, you're nodding your head. Is that been your experience?
Yeah, I think seeing things in terms of the mission that Jesus has given us, and I don't know, I kind of operate out here where there's not a lot of guys attending established churches, so I don't know, it's just a different dynamic. What your question, as I understand it, you were saying what our experience was as far as helping people practically do obedience-based discipleship.
Yeah, that was a key for you, but I guess I was saying the process gives you a way to teach obedience rather than just a way to exhort people to obey. It's becoming practical.
Oh yeah, because we're able to say, hey, look, we want to obey Jesus by sharing our story with people. You want me to show you how to do it? It's pretty easy. And so it's real tangible how we can obey Jesus, how we can show you. If you're having trouble, you're stuck, we can do it together. So it's not like trying to guilt trip somebody into a ill-defined objective. It's real practical and specific objectives that we're going after.
Okay. Well,
could I jump in on that, Steve, for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying, and to take it beyond, some of the
Sean.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's
Go
okay.
on, Sean.
Besides those things that Jeff just mentioned, which are the clear ones, we try to get people, working on right away. I think in that inductive part that Jonathan was talking about, I think the real, game changer for us has been to try to really envision people for this that they're getting upon reflection and asking God, asking the Spirit, what do you want me to do with all this that we've just discovered? There's that moment of kind of just like sobriety, like, wow, if God is laying this on my heart, this is like I just had an encounter with the God of the universe. He's asking me to do this. So it's not about us telling them anything. It's about them hearing from the Lord. And I think that's the game changer. The lesson is there, and it's true for everyone, but then there's what I call little t truth for you. What is it that God wants you to put in your life, that illumination by the Spirit to show them where this really intersects and can be a game changer for their life, for transformation. And so it's so easy because you don't have to tell them anything. You just have to take them to the Scripture and let the Spirit tell them what to do. And so then you just become their cheerleader. It's so much easier than kind of like the other way, when you have the lesson plan, you have the objective plan that you want them to get, and then, okay, so how are you going to make this happen? Well, we don't ask them how you're going to make it happen. We ask them, what does God want you to do, and how can we basically be your coach, assistant, resource to live out what you feel like God has shown you clearly you need to obey from this passage. So it's just very freeing. It's just so simple.
So you're pointing them not just to obedience, but you're pointing them to, excuse me, you're pointing them to the life of Christ in them that enables them to change and obey.
Exactly, and to remind them that the Spirit is there, given to them for being that coach, that counselor, that encourager, the power to live out the new man in them that God has made in His image. Exactly.
And they're doing that in the context where you're affirming it's a work of the Holy Spirit, God speaking through His Word to you.
Right.
And you're in the context of relationships and community with other disciples.
Exactly. It's really powerful.
Okay. I think what we'll do next is I'd like just to hear from each of you. My two thoughts are to ask, what's for each one of you individually, what's next? And what's the challenge you need to overcome in order to get there? Now, you don't have to have answers in terms of solutions to all of that, but just to give people a bit of a feel for, how do you keep moving forward in this? Why don't we start with you, Jonathan, and ask, what's next in your context, and what challenge do you think you're going to need to face in order to get to where you should be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think always getting from to the next generation, and for me, the challenge right now is well, there's many different challenges because I'm working in many different contexts. We've got groups with Muslim background believers, brand new Muslim background believers. I've got a discovery group with a Hindu family. I've got urban African Americans, and then folks in the suburbs, and it's all there's different obstacles in all of those contexts, and I'm constantly juggling. Lord, help me! What needs to be done? But usually there are obstacles to people taking the 3/3 process and going out and doing it for themselves with a group. For the folks in the suburbs, it's because they think they know how to do it better. And so they need to learn, and I need to let them be transformed by the process. And like Sean was bringing up, really tying it into this is relationship with Jesus. I'm not teaching you how to just obey a a set of rules or a set of commands. I'm teaching you how to have an obedient heart and to actually hear from the God who loves you, who made you, and sacrificed His Son on the cross for you, so that you're actually, this is how we walk and talk with Jesus, and then have them be confident that this is going to work, and not only is this going to work, this is going to be really transformational for people. So. Because they have all kinds of creative ideas about what they could do. For the folks from the Muslim background, we need to overcome a lot of fear. We need God to give them boldness, and a lot of that is simple steps, asking people, well, who is safe for you to share with, and then what are you comfortable sharing? You don't want to share your story. Well, can you share a story of hope instead, or stories from creation to Christ? Can you share that? With people from urban African American contexts are great. My experience so far is that sharing is really easy, but discipline is really hard. So we need to get them to get good at following the commands and have the Spirit really transform their lives. And so in all these different situations, I think that we need to continue to empower people to go out and make a mess of it. But we need to make sure that we're close enough to love them, care for them, and help them hear the Spirit and be transformed by His voice.
Right. Thank you. Well, Jeff, how about we go over to you? What's next for you, and what challenge do you think you're going to need to overcome to get there?
Yeah, whenever we go into a new area and we start a new ministry, I think the key challenge. Once it's hard to get the ball rolling at first. You're trying to build training churches that have a culture where there's a new normal, where everyone's running a training group, everyone's sharing Jesus. People have a lifestyle habits of spending time with each other and with Jesus, and along with building that new culture with that, where those new expectations are taken as part of that group's DNA, is building integrated teams of men and women who with different giftings. The apostolic and pastoral guys holding each other in a healthy tension, and all that good stuff. But once we see this red hot type of group formed, that's when we started to see groups just start popping up all over the place, like in surrounding cities and college campuses and military bases. And so I think that the challenge is to plant the fire in new contexts in order to get the ball rolling. But then once that starts taking off, we really start seeing Jesus give us some steep exponential growth. And so as far as the way forward is, as we identify key areas of a city or a geographical region, trying to either going in ourselves or sending teams of people in that can start training churches, start going after the lost, whatever they need to do, and utilizing the model, assist, watch, and leave, and just repeating this process over and over again so that we can plant a dynamic movements for Jesus everywhere we have a concentration. So I think the two things that we're trying to do to overcome that challenge is to mobilize men and women who are sitting on the sidelines. Like in Matthew 20, Jesus went out and says, "Hey, why do you stand here idle all day? Go also into the vineyard." And trying to get the guys that know Jesus to start moving out, and then also to move into really going after the lost, which is just trying to find guys looking for those lost sheep that really are hungry for Jesus. And so, does that make sense?
Yeah. And you cast a bit of vision for people that might have a heart for some similar things. Right.
As far as us here, we're going to be in Corpus Christi for another year, and we're trying to help guys start up things in 10 key areas of the city. There's 2 naval bases, there's 3 colleges, and there's 5 small cities or areas. We're trying to get groups started in each of those, and then in about a year we're moving down to the Mexican border, and there's a displaced population down there. There's a lot of it's a young and trainable population, and so we're just asking Jesus to give us the people that we need to start pushing into northern Mexico and then into, see how far Jesus will take this.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, you got any Spanish?
Yeah, I'm Spanish. I'm a Velasquez.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, it'll be wonderful if it jumps across that border. Okay, let's go to Sean. So Sean, what's your opportunity, or what's your next, and what do you need to overcome to get there?
I think we have basically two things coming up on the frontier for us. One is at our leader level, since we're just rolled this out with 150 leaders. What our burning passion is they've been all doing it for just a few weeks, is to try to get with them to help them master that process, kind of just like what Jonathan was talking about. They're all very much uncomfortable, not knowing exactly how it's supposed to work, because they really didn't, they might have gone to a training, but they haven't really ever seen it lived out, only by story and vision. So I think it becoming our biggest challenge, and then being able to lead it into that life so that people can grasp it and lay hold of it and begin to live it out. I think the second, so that's kind of like structurally and just leadership wise. I mean, on a personal level, I guess where I'm challenged is just to see, and I think most of the other guys that are working at this level is just to see that next generation, like Jonathan was talking about, to see that next generation, really take hold and live it out the way you envision it and the way it's being envisioned in the first generation. To see people really being one to Christ through their relationships. Right now, there's been a lot of assists. Like they'll feel, they'll be able to tell their story, but we haven't even gotten to the point of them really mastering how to share Jesus' story yet. So they try their best with friends, and then they kind of call us up. Can you come and do the assist? I can't take it across the goal line. And so we don't have a lot of pure, they're able to do, like Jonathan talked about. They don't have mastery yet of some of the three key big ones: your story, God's story, and feeling how they could disciple another person yet with the same process, because they're so new in the process themselves. Their competency and their confidence in their competency is really low. And that's why we continue to try to make it simple and intentional, so that they don't feel like it's too hard and it's just like you need an expert to do this. But no, they can do it. They just are slow to really see themselves as being able to do it at this point. So we're so young, and we're just in the beginning stages.
Beginning, but exciting.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's go back to Chuck. Chuck, you've journeyed with each one of these guys, and I know there's other folks that you journey with. You got any reflections on just people who are going this journey, how to sort of stay on track, how to keep learning, how to stay encouraged? What have you learned about helping people do those things?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is that if you know the principles, then the methods will flow out of the principles. And a lot of times it's hard for us to see the principles until we get knee deep in the scriptures and we begin to hear from other people how they're practicing the principles, and we practice them ourselves. And I think one of the things that's happening is that some giants in the faith, and I'm talking about contemporary giants of the faith, Ying Kai, Jeff Sundell, Steve Smith, the guys that are doing movements through DBS, I think David Watson, and see, these guys are principle-based, and they've developed their methods out of the principles. And some of us, myself included, we're so new at some of these things that we just need to practice what they tell us until we catch up with the principles. In John 17:7, or it might be, I'm dyslexic sometimes, it might be 7:17, but Jesus says, you will know if what I'm saying is true if you obey. So there's a certain sense of knowing that you're not going to get to until you start practicing. And what some of the things that we're doing right now is it gets people practicing very quickly, and what happens is they catch up with the principles if they stay right close to Jesus in the scriptures, learning the principles as they go. A lot of times what we do is we want to say, okay, you need this much knowledge before you start practicing. Well, you almost never get there. So there is some fear. I really enjoyed what the guys were talking about as far as the transformational effects of what we're doing. There's some fear anytime you see the script. There's some fear that this is going to turn into legalism, which is a very healthy fear. You need to have that kind of fear. But what you heard from all three of them is that legalism hasn't been the result. Life transformation has been the result. And I've been in training churches and groups where this culture of obedience was not a drudgery or a duty. It was electric, being with those people and them sharing their stories of how they're sharing their faith with other people, the things that Jesus is working in their life, deep character issues being rooted out, the chains being broken, things like that are happening because people are taking Jesus's commands seriously, and all of a sudden they realize, yes, if I take his yoke upon me, his burden is light. And there is abundant life in following him. And so it doesn't turn in, it could, but what I've experienced is it doesn't turn into legalism, it turns into life. And so as I'm listening to these guys talking about these things, it makes a hair on the back of my neck stand up, because you and I, Steve, and these guys have been praying for this for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this thing bud in our country and different places in Europe and Australia, and he's doing just the beginnings. We don't want to get proud or ahead of ourselves, but the beginnings of what he's done in India and China and around the world, we're starting to see a Jesus movement that could blow the lid off this thing. And that's what I want to see. I want to see Jesus so glorified, look so good that our far from God friends just stand in awe of who he is. So that's, I just kind of rambled, but that's
good ramblings, Chuck.
Yeah, that's
straight from the heart.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, guys, we're going to finish up there, but it's been very good. Just to I didn't know how it was going to go, trying to interview more people in different places over the but it's gone well, and so hopefully in the next it probably won't be for a month or so. We'll get it edited and out there. Now I've got everybody's email address, haven't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'd like to, especially Jonathan, I'd like to get back to you, and because we're right in the middle here in London. I've been out this afternoon sharing the gospel with Bangladeshi Muslims, and so we've just started. So I would like to hear a bit more of what you've been doing, and Sean, I'll send you some links. Just telling Sean that I've just done a series that I've called of interviews called From Church to Movement, and in the early days it was more Jeff, the sort of guys that were just out there, and all the stories were about the out there guys, and then I just started hearing some good examples of existing churches, some large churches that have gone the journey, and so there's now about half a dozen interviews of good case studies of churches that have picked this up. So I'll send you some links. But anything else you guys wanted to say before we finish up?
One thing I want to say, Steve, is I just want to continue to thank you for the investment that you've made in all of our lives. You are a catalyst, my brother, and Jesus has used you mightily, so thank you.
Well, thank you for that very much. It means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an honor to meet you on Google Hangouts, Steve. You know, I'm one of your big fans you never knew about, and your books have really impacted so many people's lives, and I just want you to know how much we appreciate your labor. You know, so thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I like to tell people I'm the Luke to your Paul. You know, and sometimes I joke. I tell guys, you know why I'm so smart? No, because I hang out with guys who ask questions. and so it's been good to be able to do that a bit, and we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, Steve. I'll send you the...
Jeff. Yep.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys.
And Sean, if you're still around. Okay. Blessings.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks, Jeff.
Hey, I'm gonna be in San Antonio on Saturday, but I don't think